and it's always still important to have that person or have these things in order. So, obviously you're an estate planning attorney here in Hawaii.
Mhm.
So, as you think about like, why would someone or how would someone go about choosing to work with an attorney? I mean, working with any professional, right? You're going to want to like make sure you have some alignment, but what would you think would be a great thing to look for in an estate planning attorney like yourself?
Yeah. And sorry, and I would just add in there, Travis, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, is there different sort of niches or different types of estate planning attorneys as far as specializations maybe
Mhm.
that our listeners should know about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are great. Those are great questions. So I think to answer the first question in terms of selecting an estate planning attorney, I think it really comes down to the fit and personality, right? Working with someone that you're comfortable sharing, your life, your situation with, right? They're going to want to know what you own, how you own it, someone that you feel comfortable kind of disclosing that information, but also someone who focuses in the area of estate planning. I think that's important to be able to to navigate the different issues that your family may have, because then they'll be exposed to many different situations and how there's maybe solutions to the problem that you may be having. And so that's kind of another thing, is kind of focus on a planner who focuses in the area of estate planning. We have a very excellent small community here in Hawaii. And so there's many different planners out there, all different kind of ranges of experiences, personalities. I was previously the chair of the probate and estate planning section of the bar, and so I got to interact with a lot of different professionals. So we have a lot of great professionals here, and so that's kind of one of the things, is kind of getting an assessment of who you feel comfortable with. Just like your advisor, right? Financial advisor, like, do you feel comfortable with that person? And then
Sure.
kind of working with that person to develop that plan. And then to your point about the different niches, some practitioners focus on general estate planning. Some people focus on high net worth planning, right? You're planning for how do you save taxes, how do you maximize, navigate the tax code in a beneficial way. There's people who focus on special needs planning, and so that's kind of another specialty, right? If you have loved ones, like whether it's children or other loved ones you want to set up a trust for, there's certain provisions that have to be included to be able to maximize governmental benefits to that individual. And so, that's a specialty area. There's other people who specialize in Medicaid planning, in terms of how do we navigate qualifying for Medicaid, right?
Sure.
That's something that has to be planned out years in advance. And so there's professionals who, that's their primary focus. So when you kind of look at, different websites, right, we do research, looking at their websites, you can see what services they offer and kind of maybe what their specialty is. But I think the best recommendations are, come through word of mouth, right? You'll have a friend who worked with someone, can testify, hey, this person was a great person to work with. I think that's kind of made the process and the way things work here in Hawaii, right? I got a guy, right? And
Right,
so
right.
I think that's generally how people, one, find me, and how people find, the professionals that they're working with is through word of mouth, right? So asking family, friends, kind of who they've worked with, did they have a positive experience, negative experience, whatever it might be. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to hiring any professional, right, it's always word of mouth is super, like, coconut wireless, they say, right? So it's like, it's
yeah.
all about who you know, and definitely understanding like you're looking for a fit that fits you well. And, for this particular case, just because someone's an attorney, right, doesn't make them be able to understand all these things. Because, my mom works for a law office, but they do medical malpractice, not estate planning. So I'm not going to go to
Mhm.
her boss just because she's, someone we know, right? So it's
Yeah.
understanding like, there are different types of attorneys out there just for common information there. Um,
Yeah, and usually, visiting an attorney's office kind of like gives people anxiety, right? They're like, oh my gosh, like I never thought I would meet an attorney, right? But hopefully, we like to, us in the estate planning community, hopefully it's a positive experience with an attorney. My experience is like, hey, I get the privilege of being a part of this process with a family, and at the end of it, they feel better about the interaction as opposed to, other attorneys you have to interact with. Usually a difficult process. No one's ever happy at the end. And
Right.
so that's what I love about, estate planning, working with families, is that, at the end, everyone's feeling good about having accomplished this, this major milestone in getting this done. So.
No, that's so true. That's actually really true. I mean, most of the reason people think like, oh, I need to hire an attorney to go sue somebody, right? And that's, or,
Right.
to go get a divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what we're doing here. We're here to set things up. We're here to get your family, get your ducks in a row, if you will. It's
Yeah.
really just, it's meant to be purposeful to help really just articulate and illustrate what you want to have happen, so that when those things happen, or when something happens to you, these things are taken care of. We're taking the guesswork out of it. Like, what did mom want to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, so good. So good. So, obviously there's varying professionals out there. There's varying costs associated with this. Maybe dispel some of those concerns. You don't got to share what you charge, but like, what are some ranges, or what are some thought process of people that people can have on some sort of cost associated with getting legal support in these documents, and getting not just like the documents, because that's not the only thing. It's actually getting the professional that's going to walk you through each of these things. So like, I want to stress that enough. Like, it's not just, oh, this is so simple, let's just go get this simple document. No, it's actually like these professionals guide and help maybe open up doors that you didn't even realize were available. So anyway, just kind of prefacing by that, like, Travis, what is a range, or what does it look like to get an assistance in something like this in estate documents?
Yeah, so it definitely can range. There's different professionals that design, have different fee structures. I would say most estate planning attorneys can do kind of a flat fee if it's they can anticipate kind of the issues that are coming that you have. Generally, they can offer a flat fee for you. Some people charge by the hour, where it's kind of unknown in terms of how much time is spent. But I would say most attorneys in this area charge a flat fee, so you know exactly how much it's going to cost upfront. What are the documents you're going to get? And so I think the range probably is going to be on from from the lower end, probably $2,500 up to maybe like 5,000, or it could be a little bit more, just depending on the complexities that your situation might have. And it can range from a simple will plan, where you have a will, powers of attorney, those basic set of documents, all the way up to having wife has a trust, husband has a trust, and then you have all the set of documents. There's also deeds that are involved in terms of funding your trust with your real property that you may have. And so those are kind of the things that commonly the attorney will handle. When you go out and do the, changing your investments and things like that, that's where you work with your advisors. But yeah, that's in terms of the, the different ranges. I know it's tempting, right? Even my college classmate called me up from California. Is like, hey, can I use LegalZoom to do my will?
Right.
And I've actually seen a situation where someone went and did LegalZoom, and hey, the document was legally binding, legally valid. However, you're answering questions along the way, right? And the questions are only as good as you know how to put them in. And like Paul had said, right, a live person has experiences, understands kind of dynamics in families, and they'll bring out your options that you may not even have thought of. And so that's kind of one of the things that I encourage folks is like, yes, it may be more of an investment to work with an estate planning attorney, but they'll be able to give you your options, right? And you can say, hey, I got this problem, or this is a unique situation in part of my family. And then they can help you navigate through that and give you your options. And then ultimately you decide. I've seen LegalZoom, hey, it works, it's low cost, but there's just, things that may not get communicated where it needs to be. And so that's just kind of the caution there. But yeah, those are kind of the ranges and price ranges, and how you would go ahead select someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, in a lot of things you get what you pay for, right? Like, so I mean, I can't, express enough, like, working with working with a live person, right?
Yeah.
Or a really good attorney. It might have a cost, but that, like you said, Travis, it's an investment. It doesn't just achieve what you want to achieve. It gives a significant, peace and like understanding, okay, like if something was to happen to me, like this is meant to be there.
Yeah, and I think the other benefit of working with an estate planning attorney experienced in this area is who may be there to execute this plan, right? So I'm about to turn 40 soon, right? I have a lot of clients, in the later stages of life that are, choosing to work with me because, I'll more than likely will be here to help their kids, grandkids transition this plan into that next phase, into the execution of their plan. And so that's kind of another consideration is having that comfort of mind, like knowing, hey, I can call this person if this situation comes up, they can help me navigate it, maybe put my mind at ease, like, hey, we got this, as part of your plan. Because often, I'll explain it one day, right? It's such a complex document. They'll be like, hey, I just want to double check, is this okay? And be like, yeah, we got you covered. Your plan's designed for that. And then that kind of say, okay, I'm good. And then they'll be able to do that. Sometimes you can't do that with these online platforms.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Sorry to interject. I love that because in the age of YouTube where we learn to do everything ourselves, I think a lot of us lose track of the value of a professional, right? And a lot of times we think we know the question that's being asked, but then when somebody provides some more context, it completely changes our answer. I just love that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, so much discussion in, I'm sure in your guys' field and in the legal field about, AI, right? What is that going to do to our industry? But I think, to be honest, like working with local families, right? There's so many different dynamics that we have here in Hawaii. I don't think you can replicate that, right? It just takes experience, understanding, hey, these are the way that the dynamics in a local Hawaii family looks like, right? This is what multi-generational living looks like. This is how you navigate these issues and different personalities, right? And so that's kind of the thing. Yeah, like you said, a professional, I don't think is, you can't replace that knowledge and experience.
Sure.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.